Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet and Good Torah. So we see events transpiring in the world right now between Iran and America. And I have to start to wonder, are we seeing the unfolding of the events where Hashem is going to bring freedom to the Jewish people living in Persia, in Iran right now? So we're halfway through the month of Teves, then we have the month of Shvat, Tu B'Shvat, the new year for the trees, and then the month of Adar. And Adar is the month of Purim. Then our attention begins to turn to Hamantash and to the Persian Empire, to Haman, Harasha, boo, and to the freedom that we were saved from the great genocide, the Holocaust that Haman, Harasha wanted to bring. And we were saved by Hashem through the great leadership of Mordecai and Queen Esther. And we see the events building. We see the tension building between the USA and Persia, Iran. And in a Masechta Avodah Zarah, on Beis Amid Beis, on 2b, second page, second side of the daf, we see a Tosfos, and Tosfos explains the Gemara and says, why are the empires of Rome and Persia drawn out? And Tosfos says, before the coming Mashiach, Persia, Paras, will fall into the hands of Edom, meaning America in the West, Europe and America, and the Persian Empire will fall. And Edom will rule the world for 9 months, and then we see the coming Mashiach. So, are these events building? So how did the Jewish people get to Persia in the first place? So, Nebuchadnezzar, who was the first king of Babel, the Babylonian Empire, he conquered Israel, he conquered Jerusalem, and he burnt down the first base of Mikdash, the first temple. And the Jewish people were exiled to Babylon, to Babel, modern-day Iraq. So a Nevuah, prophecy was given to Yirmiyahu a Navi, Jeremiah the prophet, and Hashem told us that our Gullus Bavel, our exile in Bavel and Babylon, will last for 70 years. So Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, Belshatzar, he was, excuse me for the pronunciation of the Persian name, it's not great, it's Belshatzar. So he was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, and he miscalculated these 70 years, and he wanted to throw a big party to celebrate the fact that he thought that Hashem had not redeemed the Jewish people from their exile in Babylon. So what he did is he threw a big party, and he brought in all the gold and silver kalim, all the utensils used in the Beis HaMikdash that Nebuchadnezzar had captured. And Belshazzar himself, he dressed up in the big day kahuna, in the garments of the Kohen Gadol, and he threw this whole feast, when they were drinking, Chas v'Shalom, out of the gold and silver, kalim used in the Beis HaMikdash to offer to Hashem. And it was the ultimate desecration. Beyond the desecration of Nebuchadnezzar burning down the Beis HaMikdash and stealing, all the kalim from inside it, throwing a party celebrating the fact that he thought that Hashem was not going to redeem the Jewish people was the ultimate, blasphemy against Hashem. And then we see in the Persian Empire, we're going to see Achashverosh do the same thing, throw the same kind of party, another miscalculation of the 70 years before we are going to be redeemed. So in Sefer Daniel, in the book of Daniel, we see here, it begins to tell us about the party, and then mysteriously, it says just then the fingers of a human hand came forth, and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, facing the candelabrum. And the king saw the palm of the hand that was writing. And the king's appearance changed, and his thoughts bewildered him. And the belt around his waist opened, and his knees knocked one against the other. And the king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, and the Chaldean stargazers, and the sorcerers that spoke to demons. And the king exclaimed to the sages of Babylon, that any person who would read his writing and tell its interpretation would wear royal purple and a chain of gold on his neck, and he would rule 1/3 of the kingdom. So everyone was bewildered, and none of the wise men of Persia could come up with an answer to what the writing on the wall meant. And then the queen came in, and she said that there was this wise man, and the spirit of the holy God, filled him, and he was an advisor to Nebuchadnezzar, and that he should call and ask him. And of course, this was Daniel. Now, Daniel was renamed Belshatzar. So it's just an extra tav, an extra T sound in there. So the king was Belshatzar, and Daniel was called Belshazzar. I don't know what that means. There's probably some deep mystical meaning between that. That'd be an interesting shir to look into. And so Daniel is called before the king, and he says to the king, your offer of the gifts of wearing the royal robes and a necklace of gold and a third of the kingdom, a third of the Babylonian Empire, which was not too shabby. He said, let your gifts remain yours and give your rewards to others, but I will read the writing for the king and make its interpretation known for him. So now he's going to give a bit of tochaka, he's going to give a bit of rebuke, and he's going to contrast the fact that the grandfather, Nebuchadnezzar, did teshuvah, and that Belshatzar did not. So he says to the king, he says, you, O king, the supreme God gave kingship, greatness, honor, and majesty to Nebuchadnezzar, your grandfather. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all the peoples, nations, and languages used to tremble and be frightened before him. Whomever he wished he would kill, and whomever he wished he would keep alive. Whomever he wished he would raise up, and whomever he wished he would put down. But when his heart grew proud, and his spirit was hardened to rebel, he was disposed from his royal throne, and honor was taken from him. He was driven from mankind, and his heart was made like a beast. His dwelling was with wild donkeys, and they fed him grass like oxen. And his body was washed with the dew of Shemayim, of heaven, until he recognized that the supreme God rules over the kingdom of men, that whoever he wishes, he appoints over it. So he was recounting how Nebuchadnezzar, those 70 years, Nebuchadnezzar was exiled from the palace, and he had to live like an animal in the fields, and he was like a wild man. But he's saying that Nebuchadnezzar eventually did teshuvah and recognized that Hashem, is the king of the world, is the Melech HaOlam. He says, but you, his grandson, Belshazzar, did not humble your heart, although you knew all this. You exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven, and the vessels of his house were brought before you. And you, your nobles, your consorts, and your concubines drank wine from them. And you praised the gods of silver and gold, copper, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see, nor hear, nor know, but the God in whose hand is your soul, and to whom all your ways belong, you did not glorify. Thus the palm of the hand was sent from before him, and it was inscribed in this writing. So this is the writing that was inscribed. So upon the wall they saw the words, Mine, Mine, Takel, Ufarsim. Now this is the interpretation. Mene means counted. So it says, God has counted the years of your kingship and terminated it. So Tekel means weighed. You have been weighed in the scales and found wanting. And Ufarsim, he says, is Paris, broken up. Your kingdom has been broken up and given to Madai and Paras, to Media and Persia. And that very night, Darius Hamada, Darius the Mede, who was the first king of the Persian Empire. And the Persian Empire was made up of two countries. It was Madai or Media and Paras, Persia, and they joined together and they formed the Persian Empire. And they invaded that very night. Belshazzar was killed that very night. And Darius becomes the first king of the Persian Empire. So during this period, now Jews begin to migrate upward into Persia. So upward, Iran is above Iraq. So Iraq was where the Babylonian Empire was, and Persia is above that to the north. And Jews began migrating up to this new Persian Empire. And then we see, of course, coming up in Purim, that the evil Haman, a descendant of Amalek, he wanted a holocaust of all the Jewish people living in the Persian Empire controlled it all at that time. He wanted to kill all the Jewish people, and we were saved by Hashem miraculously. Now, the Jews living in Persia right now, I think there's something 15,000 to 25,000 Jewish people still living in Iran right now. And they didn't all leave. It's fascinating because in 1948, the rest of the Arab countries, the Jews were kicked out. So all the Jews living in most of the Arab countries, came to Israel, or they migrated to Europe and America. But a lot of Jewish people from the Arab countries went to Israel. Because in 1948, when the state of Israel started, the Arab countries were so angered by this that they kicked the Jewish people out of the Arab countries all over the Middle East. But Persia, who's a descendant of Japhet, who's the same descendant as the Europeans, is not a descendant of Ishmael. They're not Arabs in Persia, even though in 1979 the Islamic Revolution began and they started following the religion of Ishmael. They started following the religion of Islam. So I don't know. So with this Tosafos in Masechta Avodah Zarah, and we see, there's potential that, Persia, Iran, will fall into the hands of America. And we see the tension growing. And we see the protesters, in the streets of Iran right now protesting against the Ayatollah. for shooting down this Ukrainian plane. And we see a growing anger in the country, and they're being hit by severe economic sanctions from America, from the Trump administration. And there's all this tension in Persia and all this tension in Paras. Now, the Jews of Iran are treated like second-class citizens because it's the dictates of Islam that any other religion must be treated as a second, a dhimmi, I think. I forgot exactly what they call it. But any other religion has to be treated like a second-class citizen. So the Jews of Iran right now don't enjoy the freedom of Jews all over the world right now. And even the Jews of the Soviet Union, now that it's turned back into Russia, can fully, practice Judaism and learn Torah and do the mitzvos and, pray. But the Jews of Persia, though they are allowed to follow the Torah, they live in, subservience to this Islamic, republic. And they're treated horrible. They're treated like second-class citizens. They obviously cannot speak out. They cannot, say anything good towards Israel, or they'll be in, serious, danger. And it's very hard. And I have a Persian friend who told me that a lot of his family's still there because you're stripped of all your possessions, before you leave the country. It's not so easy to get out. A lot of the Jews got out with the Shah of Iran when he was deposed. And maybe some left in 1948, but most of the Jews stayed. And you got to remember that in 1979 is when the Islamic Revolution started there. And I don't know if it's not such an easy thing. If you think, maybe, when you're young, you can just, leave a country with no possessions, go to a new country and start over. But as you grow older and you have a family and kids and maybe grandkids, it's not so easy to give up all, everything you worked so hard for all those years and just give it all up and leave. It's not always so easy. But maybe now we see events start to unfold. And maybe we see a new handwriting on the wall proclaiming freedom for the Jewish people living in Iran right now. And maybe we're about to see the fall of the Ayatollah, and freedom. And maybe, the Jews of Iran, the Jews of Persia can return to Eretz Yisrael. And maybe we see the great events unfolding, leading to the coming of Mashiach, B'rat Hashem. So I don't know. We'll have to stay tuned. The secrets are all there in Sefer Daniel and the book of Daniel. All the secrets of the king in the north and the king in the south and the unfolding events leading to Mashiach. So may we see good things for the Jews of Iran, in the coming days and weeks. Okay. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah.